Hey. Oh, g'day, mate. I
Hey.
hope everybody's got a really wonderful day today. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? It's amazing, actually, that all the energy emotions, Lukey, every single emotion has a internal structure. Have you heard about this, mate?
Not so much.
Yeah. It's amazing because, of course, as affection is the energy of emotion, it's about connection and connectedness and our interconnectedness, of course, and our interdependence as well. But if somebody's just sort of only at the heart level, for instance, they could be blowing all over the place a bit, you know. I think that everybody has to be functioning with all their chakras open, you know. You could ask yourself how relaxed your shoulders are and how open that your body is and things like that, really. But the structure of the emotion of, for instance, frustration is a person could feel not competent, or, for instance, the structure of, let's say, sadness certainly is loss, and grief really is the integration of loss. And these are emotions, let's see, and every single emotion has a structure within it, and for instance, even anger, and all of these emotions and everything have an inner structure. And as any emotion sort of is happening, a person, for instance, if they could have been other than in their necessary meditative state, they could be sometimes certainly be fully meditated to be totally alive by honouring and being allowing of their beingness in themselves. You know, that's all, and not having any judgment of anything. But the structure of anger, for instance, is where some inner principle is broken. And so it's sort of a principledness or something. And it's a little bit like a red light, and when somebody could have had an emotion like that in the past or could have in the future sort of thing, it's a need to have a focus more on what a person really is caring for as the outcome rather than what they don't want. And that's the I awareness or whole brain functioning principle, really focus more on what you care about as the outcome, rather than being caught up in any image of wrongness and that, which is sort of like the bottom of the cocky's cage stuff, and more groveledness. It would have less than kept inside what we really care for, and then what really is necessary, that could be cleared up, and that sort of thing. But using steps that we've been talking about as people could be tuning into the shows we're doing, it's possible really to apply just by even imitating a pattern that you're feeling is excellent in yourself, and that you're taking these things on, But refocusing attention during times where a person has can have had any emotion, you can always ask yourself, what feeling do you have about the feeling you've been having? And then you've dissociated from the feeling you were having, because you had to have another feeling about it by, this question having been asked. So it satisfies more, things that sort of more satisfying everybody that's involved, But you've got to really think about things more in terms of satisfying everybody involved, because that's really what is sort of mutually beneficial more. But certainly people have to be focused fully to be here now, more timelessly, present. But emotions, where people are all of a sudden perhaps not necessarily in their meditative state, and these energy and motions are valuable as a language, but that can be just like a warning light, on the dashboard, that something needs to be attended to a little bit more. But it's possible really for people to be able to remember that there's an inner standing, and there needs to be more invitation, and that's very important, as invitation is, you see. But, and otherwise, it's sort of really more of an acted onness, and that can be not really mutually beneficial at all. You really want these countries, for instance, around the world, to have their own voice and to develop their voice from within themselves. And otherwise, it's sort of a little bit of a bone drain and, a wage slavery and a drunk monkey stung by a scorpion, and trees meowing and cats growing leaves and stuff. But wrongness and rightness and attention sort of all of on that, I think that people can have, other than allowed a remainness of attentiveness, to what more inner needs are at the moment, And then certainly wherever sufferedness is, we should really be ever caring that this is the object of our desire, that we can be aware of ourselves, and we can be coming from ourselves, so if a person is so principled, then things can always have been a lot of red lights. But if somebody wasn't principled at all, well, that wouldn't be right either. You know what I mean? And that part of going through life, really, half of yourself is empty, and the other half is just a full caring, and that's a total self, really. And that's not perfect. That's what we're talking about, is you being more in your totality. But if you've ever asked a person sort of what was the reason why sort of they were angry, most likely it's possible that the person really can have said something that was said that was wrong, or said to them, but that it's your executive guidance really is alive evermore, as you are aware that interest and pleasure really allows you to have more whole brain patterning, and that you can remain ever more meditative internally, and then you're managing things in the outside world more. But somebody would just say, "Oh, that person's unprofessional, and that person is just a ruined sort of presentation. My God, that person was just so disrespectful," and all that sort of thing. But such statements really sort of aren't saying really anything. They're saying really nothing really about what actually is happening, or even what happened. But I reckon that everybody listening is ever more detected in their beingness, as you are, and I am. But just really wanting to know the facts, and not sort of really comparing something in terms of something else. But we should really do what we can to notice these unique qualities of the information and the statements that are being made, where our executive guidance really is present. And otherwise there's sort of all sorts of just handouts that are just all coffee stains in your beingness, But statements sort of where a person could have been angry, such as, "Hey, you insulted me. Oh, you're a control freak. A control freak," or something like that, that's sort of like a manipulation, and that really does sort of imply a wrongness, and that isn't really describing necessarily what happened, but it's sort of clear that somebody sort of kind of, other than having an aim of making things really clear, and having transparency, and because it other than allows your whole brain patterning to be, and we should be doing what we can to make more whole brain patterning, because in this way people have their wholeness. So as people are playing, that's very this is very important because we have an institution more where people are playing and in their playful self. Yeah. But we need ways to be able to, when thinking that may necessarily where somebody is, to do what they can to go to something else, which anything will do, where you're having some resourcefulness. And as you're in this state, the things are becoming ever more clear again, But anger sort of really could have been singled more or less that some sort of distractedness was by something was a prejudice that was just simply needing to be reframed, and that was a real distracted sort of a judgment, and and it was really like a missed opportunity to learn how to respond ever more effectively, But a person could really certainly have used anger to polarize to something which really is antisocial for the moment that a learning could be, that behaviour, for instance, really is sort of unacceptable. It's unacceptable, for instance, that you live in a world where the broader principle is that you've got a military-industrial complex, that spends just several hundred bill, where you've only got 20 bill, for instance, spent on basic education, for the whole world, and maybe you've got 30 bill spent on ice cream last year, in France alone, for instance, this sort of thing, But when the car's water temperature sort of gauge or sort of fuel light or whatever, could have come on, it really is just simply like a message that something really needs to be paid attention to, and we should really keep our mind on the things that are going on within ourselves, to be empty of ourselves, to be of assistance. And everyone where I come from as a Bass Strait Islander in Australia, in Tasmania, you learn to sail a boat, and you have to really, as you go out into the ocean, you really have to have the ability to sail your boat with both hands free, because you absolutely, if you're on the ocean, you must be equipped to be able to assist. And you can only assist if you have both hands free, as you're sailing your own boat, and that you've got to be really on a vessel which is shored up itself, because two people on a vessel in distress, talking to each other, they might not necessarily be able to help. You have to be on a boat or something which really is a vessel which is shored up. Otherwise, you've really got to be on this shored upness. But we can really never make another feel one thing necessarily or another. I think that would be very cute if somebody could think that, because that would be very powerless. Instruction really has got to come from within you, and you've got to be developing your own voice. And this sort of is a really beautiful message here of taking personal responsibility, for the genesis of peace, more. But, we're talking to people, and people are saying, oh, I'm going to do yoga. Oh, yes, I'm going for a run in the hills, and then I'm going to be happy, These things, the yoga and going for a stroll, and things are going to make you happy. And I think it's very important that people have the ability to escape, but that we also really have to be able to eventually get more into this meditative state of being, and that's about actually we're being aware that we're actually more interconnected as one more whole, as a whole, and this is the totality more. And of course, there's plenty of genius, and there certainly is no shortage of it, you know what I mean? But there really is a certain shortage, and everybody will tell you, of being a bit persistent, and having persistence, and actually having perseverance, you know what I mean? I reckon actually these are the sort of things that you look out there. other things, which is a bit short, radically. And if you've got a good idea, I mean, you just need of really being persistent and having perseverance with this more. But parent and child alienation, these are things which are really going on. People can have heard of parental alienation where a child is less than had equal ability to express his or her affection, toward a parent, their father or their mother, and that's called parental alienation. And those are people who really grow up to be adults, and studies do show that is a really grave sort of injuriousness that can occur to the person's psyche, and that could have occurred even before the memory was formed, or people can have just not talked about anything, you know what I mean? And they could have kept you really as a mushroom, having a mushroom strategy, kept really in the place of where you can't really see anything, and fed on bull dust sort of thing. But there's also child alienation, and people are often actively with these foster children and things, actively doing what they can to less than allow the child's full expression of his or her affection to his or her parents. And in the situation, for instance, with Dakota, who has been kidnapped, and he was transported across state lines illegally, and who's been cloistered in New York, from New York in Nebraska. And I just sort of really got a message more or less that even Dakota Open's caring for to connect with his mother, you know what I mean? And that's then if a person isn't really doing what they can to be at one in themselves, there's sort of all of those actions sort of kind of also created child alienation, and so people can be really actively having done things which was interfering and really, really interfering in other people's lives, like I really care very much, for instance, for my son to be and able to be with his father fully, who has his primary care, and is his primary responsibility, not second, third, fourth, or fifth, I think that you really have to do what you can to sort of be formless, But anything that's really reduced is not really essential at all, because if you could dissect that, then there really is no transcendence. Because once you dissect an animal or you dissect something, certainly it doesn't have any life. There's certainly nothing that can really be transcended at all. But the meaning really is not really in this, yet is really somewhere else more, you know what I mean? But you're not sort of doing the swimming, but swum in eye awareness. And, you're not doing the flying in, but you're actually being flown, sort of. And that's what's really happening more. But I don't recommend that people would be sacrificed, or even anyone would go on in the conversation that people like as we were talking about Bradley Manning, his body, or Dakota, or Julian Assange, or Dominic Johansson in Sweden. That's that young boy that was taken from his parents because his parents were caring to homeschool him, which I recommend people, and as parents, do everything they can to be more with their children and caring with the children. But I don't think that people should be sacrificed or any sacrificial of any sentient beings. I think people should live simply, that others can simply live and authentically. I really is not a vengefulness at all, as some people could have thought some god sort of was vengeful or something, but not really as a grudge or anything such as any person against a person. But that's certainly we could be talking about behaviour, and you're not telling anybody how to feel about anything. You know what I mean? You're just bringing these things up so that there's some discussion about this, and you're creating some discussion. And this is very important because children really grow up to be the most well-adjusted as people, as mum and dad and your family members and things are able to be communicating with each other. You know, and that's the most important thing as it can be. The people work toward this, or play toward this actually, but not non-inclusiveness, like in the Julian Assange situation, or non-inclusiveness or conclusiveness either. There is no sort of conclusiveness. It's sort of a bit of a mess, you know. So what do you got? You don't know. What's that person got? Well, you don't know. They don't know. It's sort of just like a lot of knowledge that's got in the way of truth, and that's worse than ignorance. Certainly, we've been talking about this, but non-inclusiveness is equivalent to hanging in limbo and just sort of twisting in the wind, sort of thing. Plato sort of has created a travesty, really, of the stock, of speech, really, at the UN. When people are talking about, the worst thing is a parent. God help us, the worst thing is a phantom. That's the worst thing. A phantom cannot take the place of a living being, and you can't be joined to a phantom. An organisation is like a phantom. It could be considered like a person or something, but it's not, or it is. As if you're a person and you've been just reduced to an organisation, and you're more than an organisation, you can't be joined as a living being to a corporation or an organisation. And the only way to do that is for you to have been reduced as a beast. Look up in the Black's Law Dictionary. But that you've been reduced to a beast, apparently, but that you're unable to be, you're not the author of the writ or something, or that you have to be represented, by an attorney on you, or an attorney on you, something like that, I think it's called. But being totally alive, you can either be totally alive or totally dead. But life, totality, in the totalness opens up more to you and I. And this is more integrating of love is one part that's going on there in the count, because one part of the count really is less than a lovingness, you see, because money really is equivalent to what this person's doing as far as love is concerned. And as it's damned, that's what love is in that situation, and that is sort of like creates a cognitive dissonance. And then somebody could have been really just going around with a lot of cognitive dissonance. And then the other part of it is all the terror and things that can have been created as a result of that incompetence. But a cultivated face, going around with a cultivated face like you see these people, they're walking around with cultivated faces, and that's the face of a serious inner misery. It's a radical, serious inner misery, you know what I mean? There is really no life, no expression, no playfulness, and it's just, you look at the person's face and it's just like panned, it's like flatland, But certainly nobody really wants to be a paid prop, you know what I mean, that just eats. And that would be just an object of desire itself, or certainly you don't want to be just subject matter talked about if he's a male, but that if a female, then it's the object of desire. But then if you're just the subject talked about, then simply nothing is going to be returned to that. Certainly not. But the economic egalitarianism really is equivalent to I-awareness, and this is an interdependence and interconnectedness of the earth and the people, and an integrated system made, But if you don't have that, then what have you got? If you are not working towards this, where you're asking everyone to participate, to become aware of how money is flowing, mean, that's really simple. Why don't people know how the money supply is growing? Why is that not a subject matter right now which should be being talked about in the United Nations? Immediately, and then make this work apparent and translucent immediately. And if you do not, then, you're showing your colour, aren't you? I mean, you're just showing where you are. You're a car, sort of. You've got a car, la-di-da. And awareness really is equivalent to being interdependent, and you don't want to be the count. I think the count is really just, you don't want to be just a slot, that money would go into as a count at all. And why would you want to reduce your life just to that? But certainly if nobody's, as a living being, should ever be reduced to will be less than any property somewhere being defended, I think that's very, very stupid and immoral behaviour. But awareness is certainly not you having your independence or your dependence or your dependence. You don't want to be a dense, or independent. I think you have to be more, I think that sort of really is more of a connectedness with everything. This makes sense, does it? Does this make sense, Luigi? You there, mate?
Yeah. Sorry, Doc. I had the mic off because I'm in a public place. It makes perfect sense.
Oh, yeah, good. Oh, yeah, right. Good on you. Okay. Look, this is not outside, all right? People going around looking outside and looking over there, looking here, looking there. You know what? Everywhere they go, I'm seeing they're looking over there. Is that a spot? Is that a spot? Is this a spot? They can't really find their spot, They're really like moonstruck towns. But that's not equivalent really to eye awareness. But inside looking more is eye, and this is where happiness is of its own self. But science really could have been, which it is really, a seeking sort of outside much more, and this is equal to not I, really, but sort of more of a misery, of awareness. It really is sort of like equivalent to the count, and you have to quant, and you have to be a quant rather than qualitatively think. You've fallen into just being a quant. In a quant and a count, quants and counts just live by words and things they have in their head, and then the count has done everything it can to create an atheist sort of state, and the count has done everything it can to create a non-atheist state, and a black hat and a white hat sort of thing, and all this sort of stuff, and just trading off and it's bottom of the cocky's cage sort of stuff, you know what I mean? And it's really just a pretendedness. I mean, it's just really pretending, you know what I mean? I mean, seriously, why don't you stop pretending and actually be a bit more authentic, you know what I mean? And take charge. Or why are you walking around actually not thinking that you haven't taken charge? It's like, well, all right, good. What a great observation. But if you've seen a bit of a chaos where you are, you know what I mean? Why don't you take charge, actually? And who's in the bus inside you? Do you know what I mean? I mean, could there have been someone up there, driving the bus for you? I mean, no, excuse me. Get more back in the bus yourself, you whacker. You know what I mean? But otherwise it's just spanking the bishop, and that's not a good thing, But it's just a pretended sort of a knowing, and that's wrong, All corporal punishment certainly is wrong. But if you begin with inquiry, and then you can really sort of know, you can be aware more, you can really then have discovery. But if you really don't have discovery because you shut things out, then that's just equivalent to being completely ignorant. And have anybody shut discovery out in the case cases where we're talking about public cases and things where Julian Assange, that case is, and where his situation is as a being. Is there any discovery that's not known? Would you say that in this situation there's a lot of sort of ignorance really going on? Some sort of knowingness apparently somewhere, but it's a fiction, and he's been joined to a fiction as a living being, which that you can't join life with life. That's the maximum of law. But only he could have been joined by having been reduced to being considered just some sort of corporate sort of organisation, which he's not. And certainly he needs to be made whole again immediately. And these people need to be made whole because they're being retaliated against, really. But you just can't be just not just bloody curious. You know what I mean? Oh, you're really curious. Ah, how good, how nice. You know, it's just sort of like a cold and wet, actually, when somebody's just curious. You know what I mean? You got to be more curious. You got to be really, really beyond. You've got to certainly be lukewarm, don't you? You got to be at least lukewarm, and then you've really got to be even maybe warmed up even more, even. You know what I mean? But as a child, what we do really to have or not be happy. But what does a child have to be not happy about? That's a good question. Of course, what does a child really have to be not happy about? Children really shouldn't have to be not happy about anything. And as a child, you shouldn't be really any thinking at all. But in all the way through your life, there really is nothing going on in the parietal part of your brain, which is sort of above your ear, just behind the back of your head a little bit there. And that's the parietal region, and a lot of association is going on otherwise, and that's a brain that has so much chatter in it. I mean, that's the reason why people are walking around like moonstruck cows. They're not even able to be able to navigate their vessel on the ocean to assist anybody, because both hands are actually applied to where they're going, even, or one hand. And how can you be useful to anybody? You can't. It's impossible. But we all have to be able to be useful, But a child to an adult to behave has to be with prudence and put in terms of the best interests of the children, and parent to pay and daddy stay farther away. It just really is not good. But no son or daughter really is close, of course, in time of the death of a parent generally. But eye awareness really is equivalent to the child being equal to learnedness of how to behave. I think that all the learnedness how to behave, a lot of that stuff is put on the person and actually really does destroy, because it's a lot of interferedness, and I think that's what you've got a lot of in these cases and stuff in the media and things at the moment, that we've been a bit talking about. But no one can give you knowledge that cannot be transferred. This is certainly not imparted. This has got to be something that comes from inside you. But if you've just got stale, dirty, stinking, borrowed money and no constitutional money, but just a script paper note, and that a $10 note is 1/10 of a dollar in its value, really, and a $100 note is 1/100 of a value of a dollar. But, and it's passed through thousands. You're becoming just ever more interested and interesting in what's being said here, and for all time. But as you're sort of being in your spontaneous, creative joy, this is equivalent to not interferedness with things, and then all the discipline and responsible. Oh man, woohoo! You've got to be responsible. I really is not for that at all. It's a tremendous really acceptance more of whatever really is, more in acceptance of flowering and blossoming and things flowering and blossoming. And this is more you being in the education. And this is equivalent to life, being more eye-aware, and otherwise it's sort of like a head-education, just running around with an intellectual spoutedness, but no real livingness at all about this. Certainly not living in the gap between the beats. So education is equivalent to life through didactic sort of headiness and cold, hard steel, grey seats in a convention room with everybody facing in one direction, sitting down still. As you relax now, you can be relaxing your shoulders and tummy and breath and things. But all of that other stuff that we were just talking about is sort of like a partial strategy, really, toward or just a confusedness, really, and misunderstanding, really. But don't wait. Why wait for happiness to be being caused? That's ridiculous. You can't be going and waiting around. Wait around for happiness to be caused. Happiness is not something that's being caused. Only like your breath, really. This is your free being, and this is happiness, and that's not a subject. Yet you, as this object of your meditated being, masses. If you don't have the count far away to control you, you're not mature enough. That's what the count says, apparently. You have to lean on the count, and the count saying, "Oh, please lean on me. Place a lean on the count." You have to place a lean on the count. If you don't have the count far away to control the crap out of you, you're not mature enough, really, to have a lean, and that's the message, to lean on the count. Even in that situation, probably the count goes, "Oh, thank you so much, just lean on the count," But no, again, no one really can give you knowledge, and it certainly is not transferred, not imparted, and that's ridiculous. Stop thinking in terms of your dirty, stinking, stale, borrowed money, script, note, and start with brand new, fresh, constitutional money, and put that in the circulation, retire the other stuff, and do it in a way that just is like a captain looking over and seeing the small boat and how it has to be, unloaded so it stays in the water afloat. It's very easy to do, but it doesn't matter. Look, I think that it's better to be more sort of in your eye awareness state. You know what I mean? But a religious person, they can't say that you're superior or bar superior. That's not a religious person, really. And the society really can't either. But certainly not a phantom. A phantom couldn't say that. A nameless voice. You can't join a living spirit with a fictional entity. And in these situations, these young boys have been joined with a fictional entity, which we could talk a little bit about. But how did that occur? Or how could it occur? It's quite ridiculous. It's this smoke screen of mirror and a delusion, but not being equal to join like with like, which is the maximum of law. You can only join with somebody that can be sued, because Julian Assange can be sued. So how about that? But a joy really is being of no comparison at all. You really need to be a superior, inferior. You need to be strong. You need to be weak. You need to have superfood, and all this sort of stuff. Or that's all about inferiority, weakness, and that sort of thing. And that's like equivalent to a volcano ready to sort of erupt and just blows the knot and boils and puffs, as a tsunami of a dead sufferedness, where the foot pipe just sort of rolls up in front of you, into a serious irritableness, But that's a big stuff from inferiority, superiority complex. And then you've got people running around trying to console you, They're going, oh, Diddums, patting you on the back, oh, sweetie, oh, Diddums, I see things not so good. And consolation really is equivalent to death or endedness, really. I don't think people should be really consoling, but that's not equivalent to rationalisation necessarily. But consoling could really be just like a bit of a computerizedness, recognising the end of death and having paced that. Worry to buffer shock, but what weak doesn't really reach you, that is weak, that it is reaching you, which what we're talking about here, that you can really be able to interface rather than not being able to interface at all. But this is you really being able to be healed up in yourself, you know what I mean? And then misery not is being protected by a crazy and silly concept. How ridiculous is that? It's like kittens and puppies taken too soon. It's just like, kittens and puppies taken too soon. That's what's going on in Sweden, and that's why they call it Stockholm Syndrome, and that's why the Swedes are the sickest nation, on the earth, psychologically, and they need the most help, just like the Lakota Indians really care very much about receiving assistance because they have such heart conditions and diabetes. I mean, in Sweden, everybody is lonely, and they report they're the loneliest people on the earth of a nation of people. It's like kittens and puppies. If you take them too soon, you're just going to remain with your little bit of rooting and, rooting sort of behaviour as an adult, and that's what's sort of going on, But I think that's sort of really been happening, because that's what maybe the Count sort of would really care for, The Count tells Bradley, apparently, not to fear. Don't worry, son, just let me smash this brick over your head, you're going to go out into the battlefield, and don't worry, a future fate, your future fate, you know what I mean? You're being trained for, you're getting paid for that, do you know what I mean? And I've seen that stupidity over and over again, like in Gallipoli, if you really know what those drongos did to Australian soldiers and other people, in Gallipoli, they were dingbats, mate, serious friggin' dingbats, and that's the sort of thing that's going on, you know what I mean? You can't really, if you don't have constitutional money, you don't really have love. So the Count tells Bradley, don't fear, mate, the battlefield future, you know what I mean? You signed up for it, Bradley was predestined to be sold as a stock just traded, and that's just travesty of the stock, you know what I mean? And routed D-Zion, as a derivative, you're just gonna, humans are just shat tails, and treated as shat tails. Eugenics is really politically correct, you see. It's like an ostrich with its head in the sand, Isn't it amazing, those people? How can they actually walk around knowing what a mess everything is and not really necessarily saying anything about it at all? But why don't you just straighten it up? I can help you, you can help me, we can help each other. I think that's the most important thing. I mean, I think this is more politically correct. You know what I mean? Otherwise, it's sort of like just an ostrich speech, ostrich in a head in the sand sort of speech. And I bought bullets like the hollow point stupidly and all of that. I don't know. It's a gravy train like the hollow point stupidly and all of that. I don't know. It's a gravy train like the hollow point stupidly and all of that. I don't know. It's a gravy train like the